Do I know if it's recording?
Yes, it is. It's up
It
in the
is,
upper
okay.
left-hand corner. Yep. So we are
Okay.
good to go. So perfect.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate your time again. I think I've seen some of you more in the past 3 days than I have in the past 5 years that I've been with EFE. So thanks for sticking with us through this all. So we just wanted to give you an update on the TRAC audit coming from the state. Obviously, as you could hear from our conversations, the consultants from the state are reaching out now and scheduling those what typically would be on-site visits, but they're doing them virtually. And it sounds like they're doing them differently between the consultants. It might be an hour for 3 days straight. It might be one time for a few hours or whatever. But we wanted to just go through and let you know what they're going to be asking you about. So I will not steal the thunder. Cindy put this presentation together. She has been our TRAC audit guru. The teacher interview section is just a small portion of the overall TRAC audit. Cindy has been working for really about the past 2 months on collecting hundreds and hundreds of documents that they will review. A different team is reviewing a desk audit of financials, grants, etc. But we're here today just to talk about the on-site visit that you will get with those state consultants. So, Cindy, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Cam. Yeah, so you can see we've done the pre-visit activities. You turned in your documents. We turned in our documents. They're looking at them, and now we're at the on-site activities portion. So you guys are most interested in what your teacher interview part will be like. And then also, just so you know, we will also be going through that same interview process over at our office. And then in the end, we'll have some final reports and recommendations will be the final process. So as you guys already know, your program consultant will contact you by email to schedule your interview. And they said, we know you're trying to teach and they're going to work around your schedule as much as possible. The dates they gave us were February 9th through the 11th, but I understand that some people are scheduling outside of those dates as well. Yeah. So we would like to, if you want us there, we are happy to help you by attending this meeting with you. So when you get your interview scheduled, if you would send that information to Karen, Diane, and I, and then the three of us will figure out who will attend each meeting so that you'll feel that you're not alone. And
we know when our meeting is, right? The 10th.
Okay. So yeah, you can just email them to us and then we will figure it all out in terms of who can do what. And I think maybe Diane has already had some scheduling conversations with, I think, with health teachers, right?
Yes, we have. Yep, we are scheduled for the 10th, but yes.
Okay, super. All right, and then I just have a list of who your consultant is here. So if you aren't sure, if you haven't heard from someone yet, these are the names of the people that you might be hearing from. Lee, Tom, Selena, Candace, or Mark.
Cindy, I was going to say too, if you haven't, can you go back to that one slide? If you haven't heard from those people yet, you might want to just check your junk mail too. You might have seen an email from one of them and said, I have no idea who that is. It would likely have their name, and then I believe it's at mde.gov. So if you haven't heard from one of them, let us know and we can reach out to. I don't see our ag folks on the line. So I believe Mark was pushing his back further due to an FFA event.
Okay.
Karen said, who is doing culinary? That would fall under Candace, yeah. Candace Vinson. Oh, she saw it right after I said that. So.
Okay. So what will the interview consist of? They didn't give us a list of specific questions. So what they're going to do is they're going to go over all of the documents that you submitted for your 2019-2020 SIP self-review process. And we are going to go through those today to help you understand what they are and what kinds of questions they might be asking about them. So that's going to be the main focus of the interview, is your documentation from your TRAC folder, as we used to call it. So they're going to go through that information with you. They'll explain how the documentation will change for this current school year, because we're now under the Perkins 5 legislation, and some of that is different. And we talked about that at our last PD meeting. They'll answer questions that you have about different areas of your program and make suggestions for you to improve your program. And they told us to tell the teachers not to worry. Their focus is going to be on assistance, So they're excited to be able to help you to improve your programs. So let's get right into it. The first section of the SIP self-review documentation is CO1, which is your teacher certification. I can't imagine that there'll be a lot of conversation about this, but you should probably know what kind of teaching certificate you have, whether it's an annual authorization, whether you have your professional teaching certificate. You should probably know when it expires and what you need to do in order to renew it. And if you don't know, you can get that information here by logging into the MOAC's website. And we'll send you this PowerPoint so that you have the link to that as well. I think
Cindy,
many people are familiar with that.
If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and out just to add stuff. We have Tracy, and I see Katie and Mariah on here, KVCC instructors. There is no teacher certification that you guys have to submit to this. There's a little checkbox that says community college instructor that we hit for that. So this part, you won't have to. They may ask you about state licenses if you have them, if it's an EMT certification or
I submitted my state license, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so they might ask you about that, and it might be new to them. They might say, oh, what do you have to do to renew that? How long is that good for, etc. But there isn't like a teacher certification that they'll ask about.
CO2 is your professional development, and they're going to be looking for your program related professional development, something within the last 5 years. So anything that has to do with the content of your course. So if you're teaching welding, they're looking for some kind of training in the welding area. If you're teaching health, they're looking for a health training. So not necessarily specific to teaching, but specific to your content area. If you belong to any professional organizations, then you probably went to a conference for that, and that would be what they're looking for. Like, for example, April is teaching Teacher Academy. If she goes to the Mecca conference, then that's what they're looking for. So you might ask them if they have recommendations of other professional development that they think would be worthwhile for you to attend, or other organizations that would be helpful as well that you could become members of.
It is okay too if you, we're being audited over the 1920 year. That's what the audit is over. So a lot of the documents that we submitted had an asterisk that said due to COVID-19, I was planned to go to whatever this PD session or this training. So, you can explain that too if you were scheduled to do anything last year. And if you're new like DL, you can say, plead the fifth and say, hey, I'm just trying to figure out, what we're doing here. I haven't had a chance to do a professional related PD experience yet. So don't be afraid to be honest. These consultants, I've worked with them for the past 15 years. They really are good people. They've all spent a lot of time in CTE programs. They come from the field, so they get it. So you don't have to try to sugarcoat anything or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point about stuff being canceled due to COVID, that's for sure. But you know, if you did something a couple of years ago, you can bring that up and say, yeah, I hope to go to that again this year, or when they're going to offer that again.
When I talked to my person, I asked if we were going to do Google Classroom or Google Meet or Zoom, and he said he can't do either one of those. He's not aware of the Google, and that they use Microsoft Team. And so down here, I don't use it at all. So I'm going to have to get that loaded onto my system before we have this meeting.
You shouldn't need to, Greg. The link, we use Teams through KRESA too, and we have meetings with outside people. I actually just had one with some other folks at KVCC, and they don't have Teams, and it works just fine if you have the link. So there shouldn't be anything additional that you need to download. As long as they send you the link, you should be fine. It's just,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Excuse me. Okay, next is your program advisory committee. They might ask you things about how did you select your advisory committee members? And maybe you're just going to say, oh, these are longstanding committee members. They were here when I was hired. And, you know, that might be how they got selected. So if you've added new ones, you might be able to talk about, oh, I know people from the industry or people that were recommended to me from other members. So you can talk about that. Know that you have to have 2 advisory committee meetings each year. Normally we have one in the fall and one in the spring. Last year, many programs only had one because of COVID, and they understand that. So just know that you're supposed to have 2. And also be aware that the chairperson of your advisory committee should be someone from business and industry. You as the teacher shouldn't be the chairperson. Your EFE support person, your CTE support person shouldn't be your chairperson. It should be somebody from business and industry. They're probably also going to remind you that you're supposed to have a student and a parent representative on your committee. And that is so hard because we often only have students in our class for 1 year, but that can be something you can ask them about. You know, former students, do they still count as a student? So that can be a conversation that you can have with them. Just say, oh yeah, well, also it's difficult to get students to come to the meetings. So maybe see if they have any suggestions on the best way to do that. Let's see. Be prepared to talk about your textbooks and your equipment. They suggest that textbooks are updated every 5 years. So if you're using something that hasn't been updated in the last 5 years, then maybe you can, say, well, I'm using this textbook. I know it's from 2013, but here's the reason I really like it. This is why it's really good. And, maybe it's the kind of information that doesn't change over time and that it would still be valid. So you can talk about that, but also be aware that you can use your budget planning forms that you're working on right now to turn into us by February 1st. You can work on those and put on those. If it's time for you to update your textbooks, you can request that information every 5 years on your budget planning form. You might ask them questions about how you can use your advisory to support your program, ways to increase the attendance at your advisory committee meetings, and see if they have other textbooks or equipment that you think that they think that your program might benefit from. So just giving you some questions that you can ask them as well as them asking you questions.
If they ask, from our standpoint, the role of the advisory committee is really to help the program stay relevant to the business and industry needs, to help with curriculum alignment, equipment purchases to make sure that what we're, if we're looking at equipment, that it's actually something that is being used in industry.
You're not getting anything done.
Another good one is certifications. This actually just came up in a conversation today. They're a good group to run by, if you're looking at adding a credential or a certification in the program, would it be relevant to your local employers? So just a few things about the advisory committee structure.
Quick question, actually, from a college course standpoint. So EMT, for that program, we have, we use the college advisory board for the twice a year meetings. They meet all the requirements except for a parent. So how does that work, Cameron, with OCTE? I mean, do they recognize that still?
That might just be a good question for them to say, we don't have a parent on the board right now. Could we use a CTE parent maybe on that board as a representative, or does it have to be, it probably wouldn't make sense, and it's probably not legal to do a college student parent since of, you've got FERPA,
Right.
all that good stuff. So I'm guessing it would have to be a CTE student parent possibly on there. So
I said EMT, but that would be the same for dental assisting too. I mean, we
yeah,
just use it.
and welding too.
Yeah.
If I may,
A little combined.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Tracy.
Tracy.
under Perkins for community college, the post-secondary level, the requirements for advisory boards are different. They are only required to have one advisory meeting each year. And there's no requirement to have parents in those. They are required to have student representation, including a student who is a special populations category, but there's no requirement for parents. So I would hope that we could just explain that.
Yeah. I think a good response to that too, Tracy, is that, we could, if we're not now, that we could partner. So KVCC hold one of the committees, and then KRISA hosts the second one to fulfill our requirement. So you get your one in, but we host the second one to get our requirement in, and then we have crossover between who's on your advisory committee and who's on ours, ideally.
Yeah, I think that would be a great path forward.
Yeah. Yep.
It's pretty much what we do with auto tech and law enforcement currently right? So may just have to look at it for others.
Yeah, and speaking of special populations, that's going to be something that they will probably bring up to you to say, as they're talking about changes for Perkins 5 and new legislation requirements, they will mention likely that we are now required to have someone who can represent the needs of special population students on our advisory committees. So that could be a tech assistant. If you have a tech assistant in your program, that could be the person. If you have a special education teacher, a counselor, a parent of a student who is special populations, a student who is a non-traditional gender, anybody who could represent the needs of students with special populations. And if you can't think of anyone, that would be a good conversation to have. Who do you suggest? How do you, and have that conversation with the consultant and see if the two of you can work together to come up with some ideas about who you could invite to be at your spring advisory for that purpose. C10 is probably going to be a bigger conversation than some of those other areas. This is your program standards and your course content. For this one, they're going to take a look at your gap analysis that you completed and submitted, and look at your curriculum content. They're going to look at your syllabus. So this is the chance for you to talk about the different aspects of what makes your course special and unique. What kinds of special things are you doing with your curriculum? Your instructional design form, that is a form that you submitted to us, and it tells us which of the 12 segments you're teaching in the different either semesters or trimesters. And we submitted that on your behalf for this TRAC audit. So if you don't know what the segments are and you don't know when you're teaching them, I can send you an email with a copy of that document in it so that you can have that information. They're going to ask about your safety training and your work-based learning opportunities and your student leadership opportunities. So all of those different documents. I know, Cameron, you have some more you wanted to say on those.
Yeah, this is, I would say this C10 section is probably what I would consider the meat and potatoes of what they're going to try to get at. This is the heart of your program. This is your, this is your instruction, your content, your syllabus. This is essentially what's going on in the class. The gap analysis, if that's unfamiliar to you, please let us know, and we'd love to walk through separately with you just to show you what it looks like. It's unique. Our situation is unique for health specifically. We have multiple teachers here for one program, and they're only looking at one gap analysis for the whole health program. So we'd love to probably just kind of chat about that. The same with the instructional design form. There's only one for all of the health programs, whether it's health science, dental, EMT. We only have one instructional design form. So I'm guessing for our KVCC partners, that's probably Greek to you, but we should probably let you know what it is so that you can speak to it a little bit. Other than that, obviously everybody has their own unique syllabus. The safety training that the state wants to see is what are you doing specific to your program safety training, so we've got Al on here, that's aviation. What type of safety training are we doing for students in the aviation course that would be different than what Rob's doing in construction trades? How do you document that? Is it in your grade book? Do you put an assignment in that says on 1210 they learned bandsaw or table saw, and everybody passed that, check, they can move on to the next one. It's pretty much the same for work-based learning too. Every student in a state-approved CTE program is required to have a work-based learning opportunity. At minimum, we meet that requirement through a field trip normally. That's like the minimum threshold. So I know with our KVCC partners, that's unique. I can't walk into the welding program and go, Joel, when are you taking the kids out on a field trip? He'd probably look at me and be like, what are you talking about? So there's different things that if they are missing, there'll be opportunities that the consultant will obviously pick up on and say, in the future, these may be things that you have to do. EMT is good because the students do the clinical rotations, or the, whatever you call them, I say ride alongs, but it's probably, it's much more than a ride along based on what I've heard. So things like that. Al has students that do job shadows. DL, I'm not 100% sure if you've done, like, if we've got guest speakers or things like that. Sometimes some of those count as work-based learning opportunities. So, and then leadership is another tricky one. A lot of times this is accomplished through those student organizations. If you have students that do Skills USA or DECA or HOSA, or they're in some sort of competition, that counts. There's also, we've seen submitted before a community service project that students organize, or if there's in your curriculum, in your syllabus, if there's content specific to student leadership opportunities, we've submitted that before too. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of kind of what some of those are.
Right. And they are changing their idea of student leadership. I've seen some presentations where they talked about, even if students aren't, not everybody can be a leader at one thing. So you can talk about students being part of a team as developing their leadership opportunities as well. So if you have students work on a group project, they're developing their leadership opportunities. So somebody might be the project leader, somebody might be the person who manages the materials. And so everyone plays a different role within a team project. So if you're really struggling and you've got your kids that worked on a group project, you can talk about your group project as an example for leadership opportunities within the classroom. All right.
Any questions on that C10 stuff? When we submit documentation, that's usually the biggest one. That's got the most documents in it. So just based on size and time, I'm guessing that will be one where they spend the most amount of time.
Cameron, this is Ken. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those that have 10th graders in our program, maybe you can speak to this later. Are they counted in the as students in the class for the just like the other students are, I guess I'm saying? Does
Yeah,
that
Ken, yeah, you're right. It was it's been a while back that they said, you know, 9th and 10th graders didn't count as, you know, they wouldn't count for funding in a CTE program, but they've changed that a few years ago. So really it's any high school student will count as a CTE student that generates funding now.
Okay. Thank you. I just wondered if that came up about the different levels of 10th through 12th graders in my class. So thanks.
Good question.
Other questions? All right. The next one is strategies to eliminate barriers to program access. And this is about making sure that your classroom is accessible to all students, including students with disabilities. You may give examples of things like, well, most of our students sit at these individual desks, but I do have a table that is adjustable if a student needed a height adjustment, for example, if they were in a wheelchair or something like that. You could talk about how you may have, I know some classrooms have those microphones that project your voice over the PA system in the classroom, over the speakers. And so you could say, well, if I have a student with a hearing disability, the option I have to support them is I have this speaker system where I can amplify my voice. So just talking about how you can make your classroom accessible to students with disabilities. They may also ask about how you avoid bias in your classroom displays and materials. You can talk about any non-traditional gender role models that you have. If you are in a male-dominated field and you bring in a female guest speaker, that's avoiding bias, that kind of thing. So that's the kind of thing that they might ask about in that area. I don't know how many questions they're going to have about that. They might just look at your documents and say, oh, yep, that looks good. So we'll see how that goes. Questions about that one?
We normally submit on all programs' behalf. In this one, we put in our application that has our non-discrimination policy from KRESA listed on it. We give them examples of our course brochures, our recruitment materials that have a variety of races, genders, for pictures shown on there. And then we also submit a statement that says something along the lines of we avoid bias in selecting textbooks and materials just to ensure that what we're using is representative of our student body. So
yeah. All right, and then the next one is Postsecondary Connections. And I had Carol send each of you an email this week with your program of study, which lists all of the courses that kind of lead up to your course and beyond. And then also any articulation agreements that you have with other colleges so that you are aware of those. Did you get those emails from Carol? I think she sent them out to everybody. Yeah. Okay, great. If you didn't and you need that information, let me know. And then also if you need what else did I say? Anything else that you think you might need, just let us know and we can get that information to you. So I guess you can think of the whole interview process as kind of the chance to show off what you've been doing, show off all of the great things that you've been doing in your program, all of the hard work that you've put in, and then areas of your program that maybe you've been struggling with a little bit or unsure or you want to improve on. You'll have the opportunity to get some input, because they are consultants for specific areas. So if they are visiting your aviation class, that means they visited other aviation programs as well. So that's kind of their area of specialty if they're visiting you. So they can give you some suggestions about what other programs are doing. So hopefully you will not be so stressed during this time. Hopefully that we've given you enough information to say, okay, I'm going to be going over the documents that I submitted for my SIP self-review. I know I'm a great teacher. I know I have a good program, and I just need to explain it to them. And I think that it should be a good conversation.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, I mean, for all of you, really, you only know as much as what we tell you about these compliance pieces. So if you get dinged, it's not on you, it's on us that we didn't prepare you ahead of time. So don't feel bad. That's on us for making sure we get you the information about being state approved and what that means and all these good things. So the TRAC audit will be a good time for us to go through and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to. And yeah, I have no doubt that all of your programs are great programs and students are leaving there with the skills that they need. It's just, are we checking all the boxes that they need checked? So it's part of it. Anytime you take federal money, there's going to be a whole bunch of strings attached to it. So here are the strings. Pam, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I do. This is for last year, and all of our documents that you just had, all of the different categories for the C, those are up there. So what I'm hearing you say is I'm going to have them in front of me. You have gone over what I should highlight, and then we're done.
So if you were identified as one of the TRAC audit programs, we've already submitted all those documents to the state.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
So they've already got them, and they're reviewing them ahead of time before they get to you. So they said that they actually, I've seen a few of them, consultants say that they might email and say, hey, in reviewing your documents, we noticed in C10 you don't have a gap analysis. That's something we'll talk about when we get there.
Okay.
Between now and then, there's nothing more that you need to prepare. And I don't, I'm trying to think if it would be a good idea if we sent you back everything that we submitted so that you can see what we submitted in those C4s. Yeah.
Okay.
Probably be helpful.
Well, Deb always helps me with all of the upload. She's been fabulous with that, but the person reviewing me, Tom Knight, I know him.
Yep.
So I can't imagine that my review would be 4 hours.
No, I wouldn't think so. Especially knowing Tom too.
Yeah, teachers should, you should have all of the documents. You sent them to us and we sent them to the state. So they should have them. But if you're having trouble finding them again, we can help you with that.
Yeah.
Or I'll get Deb to help me.
Yeah. Any other questions we can help answer at this time? Yeah, if you've heard from them, obviously Diane has already coordinated with all the health instructors. If you've heard from your consultant and you have a time, let us know. Like we said, we'd love to jump on as many as possible so that we're there with you guys as you're going through them to help answer some of the back end questions that you might not be as familiar with. Right, Rob? He's going, yep. Mhm.
Bye, April. Thanks. I feel like we need to check their understanding. Like, how confident do you feel about your interview?
That's right.
This way, or this way.
Good. All right. Well, we will. Yeah, Al. Was that an aviation symbol, Al? It looked like a plane. Or was that your answer?
That's me going into a barrel roll.
Oh, just so I got clear is, once they give me my days, I'll just let you guys know and one of you guys will join me on that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I heard. What is it? Lee is scheduling 3 days,
Yeah.
1 hour each, and then saying, hopefully you don't need the last day.
Yeah, that's kind of what he told me was like, hey, I'm going to schedule 3 hours, but when we're done in 2, we're done in 2.
Okay. Perfect.
What was challenging with that is you don't know whether to like get a sub or not. But I think it's going to work out all right, you know, because it's you get 1 hour and it runs into another class. I think I'll make it work. So, but I don't know if other people have that.
If you can at all, can schedule them so it doesn't interfere with your class. I don't know if it's possible, but
You try to, but you don't know if it's going to go for 2 hours or.
oh, well,
4
yeah,
hours.
I would let them know, say, hey, I've got this time between classes that I'd be able to do, or
Yeah.
after. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I tried to do. I was just curious if it's okay to bring that up again if he schedules like that. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah. All righty, we'll send this link out to this recording too, if you have any questions, and we'll send out the PowerPoint too, so you can see that. And then, yeah, for sure, just get in touch with us with any questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Bye. Good to see everybody.
Take care.
Hey, Cindy, I created a folder on the shared drive if you want to save this Zoom recording in, and then I'll upload it. I'll upload it to YouTube, and then we'll have the link.
Okay.
It's under the TRAC audit folder, and then the new one I created was on-site audit teacher training with today's date.
Okay.
Good.
Sounds good.
Hey, Cam,